Are you doing what the RDRF is trying to do, Kirill Dmitriev over in Russia? Same kind of story, really. I find partners to invest in Georgian and international activities in your area, particularly in energy and infrastructure.
Well, I think the idea is to take it gradually with the steps of the development of the economy. So the first step is to create a solid private equity group that is able to allow for international investors, sophisticated international investors, to have a locally strong partner that is able to, let's say, do sufficient due diligence, find attractive projects, generate IRR and yields for international investors, which are so sought after. I'll give you an example. Typically, we look at projects with an IRR of above 17%. We look at exits at 2 to 3 times our money. We look at least $5 to $20 million size tickets. So, for instance, the average size in general in the energy is anywhere from $150 million project to a $750 million project. So the idea is to really build a scalable investment platform for international institutional investors.
How willing have investors been to sign up? We've had an environment that's been so choppy on risk sentiment. It's well and truly fallen away post-Brexit. It's staged a recovery, and you can see that on equity markets today where investors are back on board buying assets. Did Brexit have an impact around sentiment for Georgia?
Well, there are two questions there. I think the first question is how interesting has Georgia been for international investors, and I think it has been. So, for example, in this year already, we have doubled the FDI compared to last year into the country. So that's just a fact. The second question you asked about the Brexit on Georgia, well, there are a lot of British businesses operating in Georgia, and they have been operating in Georgia, and they continue to do so with Brexit or without. So as far as that is concerned, there should be no effect and no impact on the bilateral commercial relations between Britain and Georgia. But of course, it's noteworthy and interesting to watch from Georgia how Britain progresses and what's the most appropriate, let's say, platform of relationships for Britain and the EU. So what will be the trade agreement?
Does Brexit make the EU more attractive for Georgia or not? Or actually, do you hope it might galvanise some form of change, or actually just think the Brits are out, we don't have a lot of hope?
No, I think as far as Georgia is concerned, British services have just become 10% cheaper. So we work with...
That's not what I asked. I asked you whether you thought Georgia was more or less attracted by EU membership now because the Brits have left, rather than, I agree with you about the UK looking cheaper on the pound.
Yeah. So Georgia has a very interesting relationship with the European Union, and we will continue to strive to integrate into Euro-Atlantic structures. I say that because Georgia is part of the DCFTA, and that is a kind of a unique and an interesting relationship that we're building with the EU. That means that structurally we have to continue with our reforms to be in line with EU regulations, and that's a good evolution of a market economy, especially if you're a post-Soviet economy, to create standards for goods and services in terms of exporting. But at the same time, it gives us an ability to trade with almost tariff-free and eventually almost a single market terms.